everyone. It's 3:39 p.m. I'm calling this meeting of the Maple Broadband Executive Committee to order for July 2nd, 2025. Welcome to the second half of the year. We believe we're here already. First item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. So you've all had a chance to review it. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve as presented.
Okay.
I'd like to ask that we add, maybe as a standing item, I think I might have mentioned this at the last meeting, under 8 updates, just have an item about Finance Committee in there. And maybe there'll be meetings we didn't have a meeting of the Finance Committee, but I still think I want to make sure we're keeping up with it.
Okay, we can do that. I took it out because it hadn't met, but I can put it in as a standing item and then we'll just skip it if not.
Exactly.
I'm open to that friendly amendment.
Okay. I'll put it in after audit. Okay, so that was a move by Shannon, second by Steve, friendly amendment by Steve to modify the agenda. Any other edits or comments?
My only comment is that I'm hearing quite a lot of static.
Yeah, I don't know where that's from.
Try this out here.
That's you, Steve. Thank you. Thank you. That was really quite loud. I thought it might have been Si's fan, but you're on mute. Okay, all right, so all in favor of approving the agenda as amended, raise your hand or say aye. Okay, and I presume Steve is in favor of that as well. Okay, next up is approval of the minutes. Thank you, Steve, from June 18th. So you've all had a chance to review the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve. From Si, can I get a second? Shannon, all right. Any comments in the minutes? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Steve? Okay, great. Public comments. Would anyone like to make a public comment? Okay, hearing none. Chair reports.
I have no chair report today.
Okay, well, we're moving right along then with the agenda.
Well,
so
that's why I was kind of worried, Ellie. We knew you were going to be late, and the first half a dozen items on the agenda are all kind of.
Yeah.
What are we going to do?
Yes, exactly. Okay, so the executive director report. So my focuses right now is obviously BEAD. We will talk about the details of BEAD in executive session, but what we can say in public session is that the final project areas were not changed. The new schedule is out. The final list of addresses is out. I just this afternoon got the update from Lucas as to what the final address set is for us. At a first glance, it looks like there's no changes to our addresses, but I need to go through with a finer toothed comb to make sure that's accurate. And so the headline of this is, I'm not sure if, I don't think I sent out the revised BEAD agenda to the executive committee, did I? Okay, let me just quickly pull it up so that we can talk about what it is. But the headline is that the new submission round, the benefit of the bargain round, closes on the 18th of July, which is the Friday of my vacation, which is hilarious. I think it opens on the 10th of July, and the updated request for applications, which contains the new program rules, is going to drop tomorrow. So the good news is that gives some time before the application window opens in Amplifund for us to see what changes we need to make and make them. So maybe I'll be able to get the thing submitted before my vacation starts, or maybe not. But either way, the fact that we've been through it once before, hopefully is not, thank you, Steve, not too heavy of a lift. Yeah, so that's the new BEAD timeline, and the other important date on here is July 28th, which I believe is a Monday or something like that. Yes, that's a Monday. That's the date. That's the provisional subrecipients are notified of awards. So that is the date that we will know whether we are the provisional winner of this project area or not. And you can see through July, through in the beginning of August is negotiation, and then towards the end of August, the VCB puts together its final proposal for public comment and submission to NTIA, and the final submission to NTIA is September 4th, and then they have 90 days to review. So that's the new BEAD timeline. So I think the good news from our planning purposes is that this is the month when we have to resubmit, and then even if these dates slip a little bit. And so far, I have to give the VCB credit. When they've published these timelines for BEAD, they've hit their dates every single time. There hasn't been any changing of things at the last minute. So I think, and there's also not a lot of time to spare here. So I don't really anticipate these dates to change at all, or if they do, they might move by a day or so. So later this month or early next month at the latest, we will have a pretty good sense as to whether or not we are likely BEAD winners. But again, the caveat here is everything is dependent on NTIA approval. So that's BEAD. So that's kind of exciting. The other thing, we'll talk about the audit later on, so I won't talk about that. And I have been working with London Middlebury on the website. We talked about it quite extensively yesterday. So there's a first draft up there. I've given some comments. They have another set of revisions. I think we had been aiming to get that live by the end of June, but they had some illness their side, so it's delayed a little bit. So probably by the end of next week or so, should be good to go. So continuing to work with them on that. And the other thing I've put under Section 7 is the private. Sorry, no, never mind. I put under Section 8 updates, the 2025 planning updates. But so I'll cover that in more detail there. But the other big thing for Executive Director Report is just shepherding that through and making sure that we have enough information for the governing board to approve the construction plans for later this year, and working on permitting and bill of materials and whatnot. So I'm feeling good about that, because that was a lot of the last 2 weeks, is getting from here's what we want to build to here's all the details and here's enough information that we know what we need to order and what Syracuse needs to quote on. So, and that timing worked out really well to lead into being able to focus on BEAD now. BEAD and the 24 audit. So that's my report. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns?
I just want to comment and say, wow, it sounds terrific, Ellie.
What? What does? Everything?
What
Life?
you've been up to and the timeline and, being ready for construction later this year. I'm excited about that too.
Thank you. Okay. Great. So moving on, Steve, would you do the honors to move us into executive session, please?
So we do want to do that, okay. You kind of already reported on it.
I've kind of already reported on it. I'm not sure. Yeah.
That's okay. Do you want?
Well, I don't know that I have anything to comment at this point that would be for executive session. I want to have it on here in case there's anything you guys wanted to ask about in executive session. But there's nothing I can really think of that's confidential at this particular stage. We kind of know what we need to do.
When's the quiet period end?
That's a funny question. So according to the volume 1 that was published earlier, so basically the updated NTIA policy notice says that the volume 1 stand except for the following changes, and there was no changes in the policy notice with regards to quiet periods. So technically the quiet period ends when the VCB has made its awards.
So that would be the July, whatever we were looking at there. July 28th?
Yeah. July 28th.
Oh, I look forward to that. Especially if it goes out. Yep. Then
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions, or do we want to go into executive session about BEAD? I think we can maybe have more to talk about in late July.
Yeah, we'll have more to talk about in late July. I mean, the one thing that I was speaking with London Middlebury about is even though we will be notified on July 28th, it is unclear to me to what degree we are going to be wanting to make public announcements about it, even though the quiet period is over, because there's still the negotiation period. Something might change the negotiation period, but more fundamentally, the NTIA could change things. So we probably don't, if we are successful, we probably don't want to be putting in our newsletter, hey, we're successful, and then the NTIA does a rug pull. So there may be further rules and guidance that come from the VCB about what public announcements are and are not allowed, but I just wanted to put everyone here on notice that we should think carefully about the nature of our public communications. So, okay, great. All right, so if we're not going to have an executive session, we can move on. So I distributed a document along with the agenda, which was the private roads roles and responsibilities. So the first page of that is basically a process document. And then the second page is the actual roles and responsibilities, which is not fleshed out into more detail, but I wanted to leave it at this level for now, which is the...
See you in a bit.
Okay, bye, Maya. Have a good time at the Middlebury Pool.
Hello.
Sorry. So yeah, the second part of it is the roles and responsibilities, the swim lanes, essentially. And so I want to review that here at this level, and then presuming that we have consensus and we're all on the same page, can turn it into a proper document to be distributed to the private roads. There are either 1 or 2 private roads that I plan to build at the end of this year. I say 1 or 2 because there's one where according to me, there's a BEAD eligible address at the end that was not on the previous maps, and I haven't checked yet to see if that's... I told the VCB about it. I'm not sure if they... I'm not sure if it's made it into the final updates, but if it's eligible under BEAD, ideally it would be done under BEAD. If it's not, then we would do it under ARPA. But there's one that we'd be doing regardless, so it's a good thing. And there's also Oliver Howe, so it'd be a good thing to get this finalized.
Is Pond Lane in Ferrisburg one of them?
Pond Lane, I believe, is one of the BEAD routes, definitely.
I think it's a private road.
It is a private road. Pond Lane, I know exactly where that is. Come on, Google Earth. Yep, Pond Lane is one of the definite BEAD routes. The other one, it's called something Ridge. It's just north of that. Something Ridge Road.
Okay, great.
Is the other potential one. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can have a look at this. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
I can make it bigger. So do you guys want to talk about the process or the responsibilities or both? I put the process on here more as context. You could understand what happened, but I can walk you through everything.
If I could offer one, maybe what I'm concerned about isn't relevant, since if essentially the narrative that we're looking at here is basically just a detailed version of what's in this process document, that's the table on the second page. Are they essentially the same thing?
Yeah, they're essentially the same thing.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is because the Word document is really vague. It's a lot of it's written in the passive voice. We don't even know who's doing it. Items 1, 2, 3, and 5. We don't know who's doing those things. I think if we go to the table, we might be able to figure out who's doing it, but otherwise, it doesn't. I don't really understand what we're. There needs to be responsibility there, and there's no responsibility.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should start. Maybe we should just focus on the table then.
Okay.
Can you see that, Adam? You look like you're squinting. Okay, you're muted, but I can. That sounds like a yes. Okay, so essentially the first thing that we need to do for any sort of road that's not a town road is we need to make sure that there exists legal permission to be able to build any infrastructure on the road. So under state law, if there's an existing utilities easement, unless it specifically prohibits fiber broadband, which most of them don't, then we can ride on it. But you need to check how far that easement extends. Sometimes there's a property owner association, or sometimes there's an easement that's been executed with individual landowners. So you just need to check all of that to see if there's an existing easement we can ride on, and if not, then we need to obtain one. And so I've put here, I mean, this is Maple Broadband. In practice, some of these things might actually be me, and some of these things is our permitting specialist we work with. But I just want to keep it at this level for what entity has responsibility. And then when working with private roads, one of the other things that I've been trying to do, and so far I've been quite successful in, is just having a liaison with the road that acts as the main point of contact for the other property owners, just so I'm not trying to email 5 people or call 5 people. It's much easier that way. And I have so far had good assistance because property owners generally have a better sense of what easements do and don't exist, and if there's a property owner association that has some sort of say over the shared roadway, which is the case in a lot of cases. So that's the first line. Any questions on that? Okay. The second thing is wetlands permitting, and so that is sometimes necessary, sometimes not, depending on whether or not there's a wetlands. So the process there is you look at the VTrans map, not the VTrans. You look at the ANR map. There's a really good website that shows you the existence or potential existence of wetlands, and then based on that, you know if you need to call in the cavalry to get a wetlands permit or not. So that's kind of a binary yes or no. And the other thing, by the way, is that I've put this here as a table. These things don't all necessarily need to happen sequentially. Like these things can be happening in parallel. And no reason that they couldn't. This one as well. So locating other utilities, this is calling in the DigSafe ticket. And the reason this is important is that we have, so for all of these areas, we have a detailed design that was done by Vantage Point, but that was done without calling in DigSafe. And so their idea of where to put the infrastructure might be a really good idea or it might be a really bad idea. So this is just something that's always done procedurally before construction anyway. But essentially, I guess maybe just to kick this up a level, Vantage Point did a detailed design, but the detailed design was based on the best information they had available at the time. And since then, new houses might have been built, or they may not have taken information into account. Typically, what Vantage Point, the Vantage Point designs have actually been fairly accurate, in my experience, because what they've essentially done is they have recommended that we place pedestals adjacent to the existing utility pedestals, and that makes good sense because people's existing conduits are going to be terminating in those competitor pedestals. So that's typically what you'd want to do, but at the same time, Nancy, go ahead. You're muted.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I have to go back and ask a couple of really dumb questions. Sorry, but what determines whether a road is a private road or not?
Oh boy, that one's out of my pay grade. I mean, it's whether or not the town maintains it or whether or not the private homeowners maintain it.
Okay.
I'm not actually sure what governs who decides. Maybe Shannon or Adam could help with that one. The Vermont Planning Atlas. No, I'm not using the Vermont Planning Atlas. Didn't know that was a thing. This is so exciting. New resources.
It's very handy, and it does show wetlands as well, and also shows you other maybe useful things. So check it out when you get a chance.
Thank you. That's great, Shannon.
So my other question is, are there not electric poles ever on private roads?
Oh, sometimes there are. Sometimes there are. Sometimes there aren't.
Okay,
but,
so you're not necessarily needing conduit along the whole length of the road.
Not necessarily, but sometimes you do. Sometimes it's partial aerial, partial buried.
Okay, got it.
And Ellie, those wetland maps are not dispositive. They're meant to be an indication. They used to be you could just check it and say, and if you weren't in, you weren't in, but now they want you to do more of a field study. So I'd say use them. If there's nothing around, you're probably okay. If there's something around and you're closer, you're probably going to have to do more.
That's basically the approach I've been taking, is if there's nothing anywhere near it, I figure we're in the clear. If there's a wetland that looks like it's within a few hundred feet, then, and luckily we have Zapata Courage on our governing board now, so she's a great resource.
Yep.
Okay, so Nancy, does that answer the question?
Yes.
And the reason we had added this to the parking lots originally is that when it comes to buried work is obviously more involved than aerial work. If it's aerial work, we build down the road and we get the pole licenses and no one's any the wiser. But if we're burying, we have to get a whole set of permissions, and it also opens up a whole series of questions around where does our responsibility end and the homeowner's responsibility to provide the usable conduits as per our policy. Where does that start? I think the S is missing from the end there, Shannon.
Yeah, sorry. When I copied it, I did it incorrectly. Let me try this again. Okay.
So the next thing on this process here is the field review. So essentially we have the existing detailed design from Vantage Point, which is the starting point. We know where the other utilities are. We have figured out the wetland situation and the constraints that might be caused by that. And at that point, we do a field review. And the purpose of this is so that the property owners who we're going to be passing understand first of all, that they understand in detail what their responsibilities are, that they need to provide these conduits, but also so that we can kind of sanity check or ground truth the situation of where their conduits go into, because since Vantage Point did its design, things might have changed. And it's also good just to have a face-to-face where people can understand, because I've spoken to several of them over the phone to say, you've got a conduit that terminates here, we're going to put something next to this, presumably, and now you're going to have your contractor dig up the conduit, intercept it, make it connect over here, and if it's not usable, put in a new one. So does that make sense to everyone? This is the line on here which has the most parties involved. So, and then based on that field review, and so for this, when we say Maple Broadband, what we actually mean is our we've been using Mission Broadband for our on-site project representation, so we mean them. It could also potentially be an engineering firm, JSI, but we have been using Mission for this historically because Vantage Point doesn't have any staff in the area and their designs are done, and it's way cheaper to use someone from Mission than to fly someone in from goodness knows where. So it would be one of those two entities conducting that. And then that person who's our liaison, they meet with the others, make sure they communicate what they need to communicate, come back to us with any recommended changes to the design. And based on that, we finalize the design.
You know, maybe, Ellie, the thing that I think I struggled with when we were doing that other community project, Auberhowe Court, was the field review part is, it's a third party person. You're making it our responsibility, which is fair, but I guess the unknown, or what's not defined there, is that it may not be Ellie and Steve. It could be somebody, from a subcontractor. So maybe it doesn't matter there, but it looks like, I think it's okay. Never mind, I withdraw.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, our Maple Broadband is responsible, whether it's staff or a subcontractor.
Right.
And I think the other thing, just to clarify here, and I will when I start documenting this, is that what we're doing is, because we're building this from fresh, and so it makes sense to go through the steps to make sure that where we put in the main line, we have taken the time to make sure that everyone is on board with what we're doing, where we're doing it, where we're putting the pedestal. I mean, even like there could be an existing competitor pedestal, and adjacent to the pedestal could be the middle of someone's garden, or it could be something where it's going to mess up their lawn mowing and they want it moved 5 feet. I mean, I don't know what these situations could be, but the point is we really need to make sure that we are liaising with homeowners whenever we're placing a piece of infrastructure on their property and digging up their lawn, or even boring under their lawn. So even if we have an existing utility easement we can ride on, it just makes sense to do this. And so far, the community response has been quite good because they appreciate the fact that we're talking to them about how we're putting in our fiber rather than just going and doing it. So once the design has been finalized, then we go ahead and do the construction. And I mean, this includes the construction, the testing, and the splicing, the testing, all of that. And once that's done, we turn it over to active service, and we actually, now that I'm realizing this, we communicate with property owners, not with the contractor, because that's not our relationship. But we tell the property owners, your road is now in active service. You can give your contractor the go-aheads to go out and do their thing. And at that point, the contractor goes and adjusts the existing conduits so that they are terminating in our pedestal. And then at that point, WCVT, once again, the presumption here is that someone has placed an order. They're not going to do this for every single house unless someone's placed an order. But if one or more property owners have placed orders, WCVT would tend to batch the rotting of those, and they would go out to the road and they would just try and make sure that they can get all the way through from one end to the other. Because again, even with existing conduits that have not been intercepted and modified, there's about a 80% success rate. And so 20% of the time, something has happened over the years since the conduit was installed, and it's not, there might be an existing copper wire in there, but it's not, you can't get anything through it again. So if that happens, they would notify the homeowner, can't use your conduit, you need to put in a new one. And this also is part of the communication to the homeowners to let them know you're going to be incurring a cost to have your contractor intercept your existing conduit. It may not work. You could. It still seems to make good economic sense to try, but we want to make sure that everyone is clear that we're not going to get any blowback for telling them to do this and then it doesn't work and they've incurred unnecessary cost. Shannon, you look like you're going to say something.
No.
No. Okay. So conduit replacement or repair is, if necessary, is the property owner is responsible, of course, and the property owner's contractor does the work. And then once that's all done and there's a usable conduit, either as the result of rotting or conduit replacement or repair, then WCBT goes out and does the installation. Steve.
Does this apply exclusively to underground?
Yes, there's not. We get into a lot more nuance with conduits and whatnot than we do with aerial. So if it's a private road aerially, then I have yet to find a private road aerially where there's privately owned utility poles. But in that scenario, we would obtain pole licenses from the pole owning utility. But I mean, I literally haven't seen this.
Yeah, maybe part of what was confusing me, if we basically scope it right at the top there, saying something like, conduit, customer provided, conduit service, summary of responsibilities, something that keeps it limited to varied service, because I think that really helps. Right. Good.
Nancy. You're muted, Nancy. Still muted.
So I'm just partly in response to some of Steve's questions. I'm wondering who you see as the audience for this document, and I'm asking that because if it's mostly you, or even mostly us, it's probably fine because you'd be available to explain what we don't understand. But if it's an unfamiliar audience, there might be ways to make it clearer if the categories on the first page and the language on the first page more clearly matches the categories and language on the second page.
Yeah, so the audience, that's a great question, Nancy. So the audience for this is, the primary audience is the property owners and mainly the liaison, but to distribute to the other property owners. And this was not in any way meant to be the final form that's going to them.
Okay.
This is more, I mean, like this is where I started. This is something that I worked on with Karen Kotecki last year just to get our process down.
Yeah.
And then based on our executive committee discussion, I made this table to clarify who did what and what's the roles and responsibilities. And I want to clarify that with this group to make sure we're all on board with how this works before taking the time to write a couple page document for a different audience.
Okay.
So that will be the next one. And you guys will be a great test case for that, because if I write something that doesn't make sense to you, or if there's a step that doesn't make sense or a term that doesn't make sense, you guys will catch it before it ever goes to a homeowner.
Fine. Because, I mean, like generally speaking, the first page only talks about the permitting process and the easement process. And there's more on the second page that that goes beyond that.
Yep. And what I just explained explains why, because the part that Karen and I needed to sort out is like, what do we need to do before construction?
Yeah.
Right. And then it was the latter bit where we wound up kind of making up the playbook as we went along, because building a private road is a little bit more complicated than just building obviously than building aerial or building a private stretch down a town road.
Yeah.
And let's see, Ellie, I know this is a process document, but do you have another document that says who pays for what?
No, but that would go in here as well. I mean, conceptually, we pay for we pay for everything that's here, right? So we pay for all of the permitting work, and we pay for the mainline construction, the engineering work, and our field rep. And there's an existing policy we have which talks about the fact that we require a usable conduit for buried service. So I don't think we need to modify that, but we will reference that in the document because it's an important thing for the homeowners to understand, so that they know what they have to do to be able to use the fiber. And it's really, really important to have that expectation set up front.
And even general expectations about cost, about the magnitude of the cost.
Yeah, I guess, although I don't really have, I'm hesitant to quote what contractors are going to charge because I don't really know what contractors are going to charge. And if we
Right.
say it's X per foot and then they get quoted more than that, I don't want to be like, well, Maple Broadband told us. So, yeah.
So you could just put in some kind of historical information about that.
I don't even know what it is. I mean, the bills don't come to us. My recommendation to the property owners, again, is we have a list of contractors on our website who understand our requirements. My recommendation is call these, they're all guys, call these guys up, find one you're comfortable with, get the sense of pricing. And again, I recommend if you guys can coordinate amongst yourselves that you all use the same one so that there's not, so that the person who is familiar with the entirety of the road and the entirety and handles it as one project. And you
Yeah.
might even get some economies of scale that way.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to put a note here because that recommendation is part of what I intended to put in the process documentation. Just here's some guidelines as to how you might proceed. Not that you have to, you can do whatever you want. You can get out your own ditch witch if you want to. I don't really care, but we just need there to be a conduit that's put in.
Yeah.
So, but I will put that in.
I do think Nancy's right as far as giving people some sort of expectation as to how much this is going to cost.
Yeah, I don't agree with that, Adam.
Okay.
There's a lot of variety about how much this would happen, and I think what we've tried really hard to do generally is try to stay away from making representations about what other people are going to do. It's a very risky proposition.
Right, well, then maybe
It depends so much on whether it's the end of your driveway is 50 feet long or 5,000 feet long, and suddenly the price goes crazy. And if somebody wants conduit, they're going to have to eventually get to the bottom of that anyhow. So,
On the other hand, though, we don't want to do a whole bunch of work on our end if it turns out they discover it's more expensive than they want to deal with.
Yeah, so maybe we say it's an expensive process.
Yeah.
And before they make a decision, they should really kind of nail down contractor costs.
it can be an expensive process.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not an inexpensive process.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I typically haven't. Surprisingly, I actually haven't had that question too often from people on private roads. I've had the question more from people who have buried service along a main road, possibly because people who live along private roads have a better sense of cost anyway because they've already done work. But there's something else I was going to say. Oh, but the other thing is we're not building these private roads for fun. We're building them because we have a universal service obligation. Because the way EC Fiber handles this, for example, is they say if it's a private road, we're not paying for it. The property owner association needs to put up, because to buried service costs about 5 times as much as aerial, and so to some degree it is a little bit unfair that as a district we're bearing the cost to have a buried service on a road where the property owners, through their own choice, don't have utility poles. But at the same time, we do have a universal service obligation, and we've received millions of dollars in grant funding, and it's not It's not like there's hundreds of these, right? I mean, there's a handful. So just feel like that should be said as well. That's the fact that there's no utility poles on the road is typically the homeowners have had some, whether they bought a house or, they've put up the road, like they're aware of the situation. That's been my experience, at least. I'm sure it's not universal, but more often than not. Okay.
And
anything else on this?
These locations already have electrical service.
Yes, because if they're off grid, we're not building them with that 71.
Right.
There might be some under BEAD if we get BEAD that we'd have to, but I don't think there's too many private roads with multiple houses that don't have electrical service.
Okay.
Well, I think, Ellie, you pointed out that this is not a step-by-step, this must be done before this can be. So homeowners can really, in the course of the beginning of the conversation, they can be doing their homework while we're doing a homework about easements and wetlands
And permits, yeah.
So there are things that can certainly be happening, and so that we don't get into doing a finalized design prior to their understanding what it's going to cost them to put their put their conduit in.
Yeah.
Or fix or change or upgrade their conduit.
Yeah. But I mean, the other point is, regardless, that's just one of the strings that came along with our grant money, is that we have to make sure that we offer service to the unserved and underserved, even if they don't take it, right? Whether it's aerial or buried, this is just something that we have to do. It's a cost we have to bear. I mean, these private roads, the ROI is for sure negative, but that's, it's the ticket to entry.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on this?
I kind of want to go back to my original comment. If others on the committee agree, perhaps we could just remove that first page, which I think is confusing. And I think the second page with its responsibility matrix really gets the job done, and that should be sufficient.
Nancy, you're muted.
Ellie's rewriting the whole thing
Yes, I'm rewriting the whole thing.
for an unfamiliar audience.
Okay.
Yeah, I do think there does need to be a narrative. This is not intuitive information.
No, you can't just present this table to a homeowner and expect them to understand it.
No.
So this is think of this as my internal reference document, and there will be a separate document that goes out to the public.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, are we good on this? Can we move on? Okay. Thank you guys for your feedback. All right. So moving on to section 8, updates, audit. So obviously the 2023 audit was approved by the governing board last month. Yay. Bonnie submitted that to the federal audit. So I submitted that to the VCUB. Bonnie submitted it to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. I yesterday went into the Federal Audit Clearinghouse to authorize or affirm or whatever it was that I did, and release it to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse for review. So that happened under 24 hours ago. I haven't gotten an email that I've seen that has been approved and is all finalized. So, but basically that's done, as we know. And then 2024, I am nearly done with the asset capitalization. I've been working on that feverishly in between BEAD and other planning. And Lynn, I need to connect with you and Darlene, but I did take, because I was mailing Bonnie about the submission to the whatchamathingy, but I did give her a heads up that I'm going to be on vacation. So like I'll be working this week and next week, and then I'm on vacation. But if we could plan to hit the ground running hard the week after I get back, I think we should be ready for that. And if she could please start preparing the questionnaires and the files and the whatnot in the meantime. So I haven't spoken to you or Darlene about I know that you're on vacation in September, but I want us to be done by the time you're gone. But I haven't spoken to Darlene with her schedule yet. So this is I was just mailing a few hours ago. So apologies for getting out ahead, but I know that we've had some emails that you're also wanting to get this going. So I didn't figure you'd be upset with me.
No, not upset. Thank you for connecting with her. Maybe the three of us can connect before you go on vacation.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely want to do that.
Okay.
Probably sometime next week we can do that.
Okay. Terrific.
Okay.
Thanks, Ellie.
Anything on the audit, anyone? Oh, actually, just one more thing for you, Lynn. What I was planning to do on there is to finish the asset capitalization, send that off to Darlene, and then like give her a day or so to look at that, because otherwise we're kind of having a talk about a talk rather than a here it is. Now you can wrap your head around it and then we can talk. That was kind of what I was thinking. So maybe I should set something up for towards the end of next week so that we have it on the calendar and she has the expectation.
Yeah, and just quickly, I asked her about what her schedule was for the summer, and she's doing long weekends. So I think if we're going to aim for a day, it should be a Thursday, not a Friday.
Great. Good to know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. But she's not taking any weeks off during the summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Great. So I'll get that scheduled for next week. Anything else on audit from anyone? Okay, Finance Committee update. We have no update because we haven't met. Just to remind everyone, what's pending there is financial models revision and discussion, which has gotten pushed to the back burner a little bit between the new BEAD schedule and wanting to get the 25 construction plan done and the 24 audit. So, but I think within the next couple of weeks, I'll be able to focus on that. And I need to anyway, because in the August, the VCB is asking CUDs to present their business model, basically an updated business model presentation to the board in executive session. So I'm on the schedule for August. So this has to happen anyway by the VCB August meeting. So I obviously want to meet with our finance committee before going into that. So that's the only update I have. No update, but work to come. Okay. 2025 planning updates. So I covered a little bit of this in the executive director's report, but all of the segments that we discussed in executive session a couple of weeks ago, we know what they are conceptually. If anyone has any questions, I can handle them offline, or you can go out of bounds of the schedule and have another executive session now. But long story short, I've taken all of those, I have compiled them, and the areas that require, that are buried, I have Karen starting to have a look at that from an easement standpoint, and been reached out to the one private road that's involved. And I compiled all of the staking sheets and the counts to figure out basically how much quantity we were looking at, so that Syracuse would have a sense of how to quote. And then in the process of doing that, I figured out how much cable we needed of the different, the 24, 72, and 48, 140, sorry, 24, of which we have tons, 72 and 144, and discovered in the process, this is probably Jeff joining the meeting, discovered in the process that we need a couple more reels of 72. No big surprise there, because there's a lot of 72 that was used in the Vantage Point designs. Jeff, is that you? We can't hear you. I presume that's Jeff. He did say that he was going to be traveling and would try to join by phone.
Yes, it is me. Sorry.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Great. Okay. And then the other thing as well is we just had a look at the inventory list, and we're a little bit low on splitters. I think we have 6 in stock, and we're not turning up any new service areas this year, but 6 is a little bit low, because as we start to have more service in a serving area, then we need to go add more splitters. So we want to have a minimum stock level that's probably a little bit higher than 6. So Steve put together a request for quotations for 3 reels of 72 and 15 splitters, I believe it was. And we've distributed that, and the plan is to do the bid opening at the governing board meeting next week. So we can get that. We'll do the bid opening then, and then we will, it's probably not going to be a difficult thing, and we'll probably put because that amount is going to be something the executive committee can approve. So we can either, just trying to think. No, we're not having a meeting for 2 weeks. We'll probably just do it via email, the approval, once we've done the bid leveling.
Right, yeah, I'm thinking, the bids come in on Monday, and then the governing board meeting is on Tuesday. You may or may not have time to do bid leveling on those, but regardless if you do or not, I think, we're not talking about governing board approval level. I think it's executive committee approval type level. So, and when are we meeting after that governing board meeting?
We're meeting the week after that. I'm on vacation, so we're meeting the week after that. So it'll be about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And these are bids for the construction?
No, this is, so the construction, so Syracuse, I've asked them to put together a bid for the construction. That
We
will
don't
be,
need, we don't need to put that out to bid?
we are doing it as an amendment to the existing construction agreement,
Okay.
because it's all part of that same construction grant.
Okay,
So
cool.
it will almost certainly be of an amount that is higher than the executive committee's ability to approve, hence having it ready for presentation and approval at the governing board meeting. And the cable and splitters is going to be within the executive committee's ability to approve, and I think via email, because it's not a complicated thing. I mean, it's a commodity, and the lowest price is going to win. I mean, that's what it is. The other thing, Steve and I had a call with Syracuse just to inform them of what we had going on and ask questions like, okay, we have some poll licenses now, and we have some that we won't have for a little while. How do you want to proceed? Do you want to do it all at once, or do you want to, send some crews here to do what you can? And surprisingly but happily, they said, well, we will send some aerial crews through to do whatever you have poll licenses for. So there might be a little bit of construction that happens in July we've got like 3.5 miles, something like that, which might be more depending on when in July and when GMP does some work that we've been waiting on them for a while. So that's good news. And then, but the 72 count, according to me, we won't need until we have all the licenses and they send the crews back, which will probably be a few months later, like October-ish would be my guess. So we're not in a huge rush to get this cable, but we're in a little bit of a rush because we don't want to be caught without it and having licenses and crews available and no cable. So that's what's going on with that. So I think we have a good plan. The only thing we don't have the quotes yet, and we don't have the numbers from Syracuse, but I don't have any particular concerns about that. Okay. Anyone have anything else? I do, by the way, have an email from Syracuse that confirming that they'll get us pricing Monday at the absolute latest, which is a whole day in advance. So, okay. All right. So, Vacuda VCBB updates. I put this on here just so that we would have a placeholder to be talking about things. Trying to think of what's going on. Under Vacuda, there's not too much going on right now, other than most CUDs that are participating in BEAD are scrambling around BEAD, so that's been where a lot of the attention has been. There is one of the things that Vacuda is going to be doing is engaging. There's a DC lawyer called Lerman Center, and they are their regulatory support to a number of the CUDs directly. So they're going to be working with Vacuda to do basically a month, like 1 to 2 monthly trainings on regulatory support and compliance. So Krista and I worked with a guy over that side called Steve Curran, one of their lawyers, to put together a scope for what those things are. So part of it is just like what's the annual regulatory compliance calendar, and some of it is understanding better things like universal service obligations and carrier of last resort requirements, and a lot of these things like uniform guidance, things that's I understand at some level of detail, but I'm sure there's gaps in my knowledge, and some of the newer executive directors, they probably have bigger gaps in their knowledge. So if anyone is interested in nerding out on regulatory compliance matters, there will be trainings, they will be recorded. There will be usually in the slot where the Vacuda Finance Committee meets every other week from 12 to 1. So we're going to be having these 1 to 2 a month from 11:30 to 1. So the first one will be later this month. So that's exciting. I'm happy for that. Training and learning is always good, because what you don't know can hurt you. Steve?
I'm not sure this is germane. When I started to do some research back when we were looking at building out Ripton a couple of years ago, it became very clear that permitting in the Green Mountain National Forest is problematic. It's difficult, time consuming. Is the training that you're describing, could that kind of thing be incorporated in that, or is it really out of scope?
That's a little bit out of scope. This is more telecommunications regulatory FCC compliance, like and the boundaries between the FCC and the state, like what lives at state level, what lives at federal level, and how does that interplay work. And as you guys will have seen in the national news, the Supreme Court had its decision last week, Friday, that affirmed the ability of the FCC to actually administer the Universal Service Fund, which is great news. The status quo is held. Very happy with that. But there's now ongoing efforts in DC to reform how universal service works. So it would be good to understand what this actually is. I mean, we're not, and how this relates to Lifeline, which we haven't signed up for because you need to become an ETC, which is an eligible telecommunications carrier, which we don't really want to do. But I think this is one of the potential avenues of reform, is to open it up so that more non-traditional telephone providers can get access to those funds. Okay, so that's that. VCBB updates. Trying to think of what to say. Well, I did mention the update earlier that the board is going through and requesting updates from each CUD as to their business model, and just kind of, which I think is good. It's good for them to understand where we actually are and what's going on, and how healthy or not we are, and what our risks are and whatnot. VCB staff is chugging along. There are communications between VCB and Vacuda trying to understand how we work together and how we liaise in this brave new world of digital equity without a digital equity grant from the federal government, because the VCB has 2 staff that are full-time on digital equity, and trying to figure out what that means. So So that's that. The next BCBB board meeting is the week after next. So that's the week that I'm on vacation. So I'm probably not going to listen to it. I'll listen to the recording later. That's all that I have on BCBB right now. Anyone have any questions? Okay. All right. Parking lots. Oh, okay. I have an update. So I took the liberty of adding to the parking lot mainly so that I didn't forget about it. Number 27, which is partner for affordability qualifications, because as discussed, we need this for the long drop program when it resumes. And again, we have a budget item that we don't have any way to qualify people for. So I'll put this on here. And then after I distributed the agenda, I was able to get a response from CVOEO. So I have a call with them tomorrow, actually. So that's good. I'm quite happy to have that discussion, because part of it is just to get like a straight up or down, like, are you guys interested in doing income or other, or other eligibility validations for people in Addison County? And if the answer is yes, great, we work with them or talk about how to work with them, unless the price is crazy. And if the answer is no, then okay, now we have the answer and we know that NEC is willing to do it and they're willing to do it for the whole state, and we can go down that route. But the other part of the conversation is just making them aware that we exist and that this program, the long drop program, is going to exist. And if there is some sort of fund that comes at some point, whether we fund it or the state funds it or the federal government funds it, that is for eligible low-income consumers, can they help us with outreach? And just even, that's one of the things that Matthew's looking at, is how do we even find out what portion of our service territory people might have needs, and how do we reach them? How do we speak to them? What are the concerns and considerations there? So, I mean, obviously CVOEO is not the only stakeholder in this, but they are a key one. So that's that. Anything else on the parking lot anyone wants to talk about?
2 items, Ellie. Do we want to just push out that item 22 until the end of the year? That was, it seems to me that we're not static. What we're doing is not, we're not, nothing is predictable right now. We don't know what our world is going to look like in a few months, and we keep kicking this down the road a couple months. And I'm just thinking, well, we owe it to ourselves to follow this. This has value, so let's just maybe not do it until January of next year. Thoughts?
Maybe we consider kicking it up by a couple of months to the third quarter or something, because I think that at the end of this month, we're going to know BEAD or no BEAD provisionally. What we won't know is the NTIA approval. But I kind of feel like, in a way, this relates to what I'm doing with the business modeling, having a BEAD and a non-BEAD scenario. So to some degree, I'm already doing this, and we're doing this to the finance committee, but that's at a financial level versus a broader operational level. So maybe we put this in fourth quarter. Does that sound good to everyone? Like early fourth quarter, like late Q3, early Q4?
I think that makes sense.
Okay. Late Q3, early Q4.
And then a sort of a similar question regarding the network management agreement. I know we keep talking about it, but it's really feels to me like, for very easy to defend reasons, we're really not focusing a lot of energy on changes to the network management agreement. Do we think we're going to have it done by the end of the year?
I thought we needed that for BEAD, though.
We made a small amendment to the network management agreement that covered the BEAD specific responsibilities.
Okay.
So what is left is more general cleanups that benefit both of us. I would like it done by the end of this year, but I think, to your point, Steve, I'm going to update the current status and next steps to talk about this will be prioritized post BEAD, post 24 audit, because I think that just clarifies where we are.
Great.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Have you heard anything on the Ripton Hub?
Well, nothing new, but I guess that's worth pointing out. We do have assigned easement for the Ripton Hub, and I've submitted a request for construction permit, so that should be coming in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So that at that point, if that goes well, we will then be able to proceed with all due haste to build out our last 2 hubs. But that's kind of wide open at this point, I think, Kelly. The one that I kind of wanted to mention, and I guess it would be helpful to get your thoughts on this. Ellie and I are meeting with JSI on Friday, a week from tomorrow. That's the day before Ellie clears out of town for a while, goes on vacation. And the meeting is to discuss, to create some clarity regarding the Old Town Road project up in Ripton. And I kind of gave you a little bit of a cursory review of that before, but we have time, right? It's June now. I'm guessing we're going to be doing this in September, July, August, September, 3 months. So I'm thinking we're going to be okay, but we need to purchase materials. We need interduct and we need pull boxes, and we need to have them before we can do the job. So I'm feeling a sense of urgency just to getting it accomplished. So when Ellie and I meet with the engineering firm on a week from tomorrow, I'm hoping that they're going to be able to give us, you should buy 10,000 feet of interduct and 10 pull boxes. And here are the part numbers. That's what I'm looking for. And at that point, what I'll be doing is putting out to bid. I don't need your approval to put it out to bid, but we'll do it in such a way that we can move through it. We'll do a bid opening just like we're doing with the 72 fiber cable Ellie was talking about. And then we can get that processed and then purchased as quickly as possible. I think the biggest challenge I'm facing right now, and I'm waiting with Lee Cheney on, is it's kind of a weird situation because the project is kind of in the wilderness. There's no loading docks anywhere nearby the project, and we're bringing in big reels of interduct, 114 feet. There's some of them are 10 feet in diameter and very wide, 5 feet wide. And they're all going to be arriving in, at this point, they're going to arrive in Waitsfield, which is where we ship everything. All of our materials always first go to Waitsfield. And then when we need the material, we need to pick it up, ship it to Ripton, find some way to get it off the truck that we're transporting with, and then we'll have the materials we need to do the job. So as it stands right now, there's a gap there. We don't know how we're going to transport all of the materials from Waitsfield to Ripton, because those materials are very large, and I don't think that I'm waiting to hear from WCVT, but if they can't help, there's a couple other ways to do it that I'll be pursuing. One is drop ship. Do the bid, award to the low bidder, the lowest qualified low bidder, and that low bidder under this potential scenario would be, the conditions for awarding to them is that they would take delivery of all of the project materials, keep them at their warehouse, and then on our call, they will deliver everything to the job site, in which case they'll be responsible for offloading all those materials. So it's a good solution. I'm sure we can do it. I'm sure it would cost us something, but it's too early to tell for sure. There's some more steps that we have to go through to be sure, but that's kind of where we are on that. And you'll eventually get exposed to the pricing for all those Old Town Road materials, I'm hoping within the next 2 or 3 weeks.
And just in case anyone's wondering how we're going to pay for this, my thinking is town ARPA. Because this route would be part of BEAD, and so if we get BEAD, I'm unclear because it's not. There's all of the NEPA permitting required for expenses to be allowable under BEAD, so it's not our permitting and whatnot. So I'm not entirely sure if it would be an allowable expense. So there's plenty of money in town ARPA to pay for this.
Yeah, I think, and I'm sure Ellie shares this feeling, is we need to understand how much it's going to cost. I'm a little worried about that because, like the interduct, assuming 3 reels of interduct, it's going to be about $5,000 or $6,000. pull boxes, I don't know, it's gonna be maybe $1,000. But then we're gonna have somebody that we think we're going to need to have to babysit the project for the duration, a body, full-time, 40 hours a week, multiple weeks. That I think could be quite expensive. So that's also what I think, Ellie, we'll hope to find on a week from tomorrow.
Yep. Yes, indeed. So, TBD.
TBD.
Steve, should we put Old Town Road on the agenda as just a recurring topic? Should I put it
Sure.
on as okay?
Yeah, I think we're not really getting specific completion date. We're getting very, very soft commitments from Green Mountain Power, and all I think they're saying is late in the season. I think it's probably towards the tail end of the construction season, so maybe it's October even. I do not know, but I think what we really need to do is we need to be kind of poised at the starting blocks with all the materials we need and commitment from the resources that are going to do the work they need to do. It did occur to me, Ellie, we're not going to be successful in getting the cable pulled through the interduct as part of the base job. We're just going to have to engage Syracuse or whomever to pull the cable through the interduct when the time comes. So it wouldn't be part of anybody's scope. I think we do need construction oversight of Syracuse work when they do pull the cable through, but that's it's not part of the scope, it seems to me. It suddenly looks a lot like just any old chunk of cable run. It's only a couple miles long.
Yep. Adam?
Steve, do you know if Green Mountain Power is going to upgrade that road too as part of their process?
When we were last talking to the folks at Green Mountain Power, one of them had said, either that or it was during the pre-bid conference, they said the town is asking about getting that road condition improved. And we don't know the answer. We know that this has been on a lot of people's minds for a long time. I think when I spoke with Mike Christian from Green Mountain Power, right now we've seen that beautiful report that came from Otter Creek Engineering on that, and it's overgrown. You can't really see parts of the road, several segments of that road. It's just bushes everywhere, and you can maybe see a pole line up above but basically it's going to be not navigable. So the first thing that they claim they're going to do is they're going to run all the way up and down that road and clear it all away. So we know that it'll be clearer and easier to navigate, but I know based on the report from Otter Creek Engineering, the roadbed is non-existent in places, so it would involve a big chunk of change. And I think maybe you had mentioned, Adam, this might be a great opportunity for kind of a special grant that might be applicable for Ripton to take advantage of. Does that sound familiar?
Maybe. That's what I'm trying to figure out, honestly, is if there's how much the town of Ripton knows, and if there's any way for them to get some either emergency management funds or VTrans funds to do a little bit more with GMP while they're there.
Well, and the thing is, based on that report, I originally read that it was 4 miles long. It looks like it's more like 3 miles long. The first stretch of mile on the east side is maintained by the town of Ripton, and then the balance of it is the Wild West. Basically, yeah. It sounds like people go in there to do hunting and things like that, but it's just not suited for anything other than that. So
there is some great brookie fishing up that way, Adam.
Well, the other thing to say as well is, I mean, Steve mentioned earlier the GMP, the Green Mountain National Park. I can't even speak. Green Mountain National Forest permitting process. So it strikes me that doing something with the roadway would probably require a permit that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I mean, just realistically speaking, it's the sort of thing that probably should have been discussed 2 years ago when GMP first started talking about this.
I think it's been discussed a lot longer than that, Adam. I've got that report. I don't know how old it is, but It's concern. It's concern for everybody who lives in Ripton. If the Middlebury River overflows, they're trapped. Or
on
they
the other
gotta
side.
go. Or yeah, they
Yeah.
gotta go west. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they did that for us 3 or 4 years ago at this point.
Yeah. Great report. I keep throwing it around, hoping somebody will read it.
Share it to the executive committee. Okay. Does anyone have any other business? Okay. Our next meeting is July 23rd, and if there's no other business, I think we can be all set to adjourn.
And we have a governing board meeting, right, on next
Yes,
week?
next week Tuesday we have a governing board meeting, so I will see you all there, or most of you, probably all of you. All right. Have a wonderful 4th of July long weekend, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Bye all.
Thanks. Thank you.